The perfect life shattered. Sarah Winters stood before the full-length mirror in her bridal suite, her reflection showing a woman who seemed to have everything. The white silk gown hugged her figure perfectly, and the delicate veil cascaded down her back like a waterfall of dreams. At 28 years old, she had built a successful interior design business from nothing, and today she would marry Marcus Thorne, the man she had loved for 3 years. "You look absolutely stunning," her best friend Lila said, adjusting the flowers in Sarah's hair. Lila had been by her side since college, through every struggle and triumph. "Marcus won't know what hit him." Sarah smiled, feeling grateful for the life she had created. Her small design firm had just landed a major contract with the city's most prestigious hotel chain. Her relationship with Marcus, though it had its challenges, felt solid. He was ambitious, charming, and had promised her a future filled with love and success. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the historic chapel where 200 guests waited. Everything was perfect. Too perfect perhaps for fate to allow it to continue. The wedding that never was. The music started and Sarah took her father's arm, ready to walk down the aisle. But as the doors opened, she froze. The scene before her was not what she expected. Marcus stood at the altar, yes, but his face was pale, almost gray. The priest looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Then she saw it. On the large screen behind the altar, meant to display romantic photos of the couple, a video was playing. Her heart stopped as she recognized the setting. It was Marcus's apartment. The footage showed Marcus and Lila together, kissing passionately. The timestamp showed it was from 3 nights ago, during what was supposed to be Sarah's bachelorette party. She was no longer the soft, trusting woman who had been betrayed. Her eyes were harder now, her smile calculated. She dressed in power suits that commanded respect, and she moved through the business world like a shark through water, elegant and deadly. She had also done her research. Marcus and Lila had married shortly after destroying Sarah's life. They had used her stolen client list and business connections to build their own interior design empire, Thorne and Associates. They were wealthy, successful, and respected in society. They seemed untouchable. But Sarah had learned that every empire had cracks, and she had spent 5 years studying theirs. She knew their weaknesses, their secrets, their vulnerabilities. She knew that Marcus had been embezzling from his own company to maintain his lavish lifestyle. She knew that Lila had made enemies with her ruthless business tactics. She knew everything. On a cold autumn evening, Serafina Cross stepped out of a black car in front of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, where a charity gala was being held. The event was hosted by none other than Thorne and Associates. As she walked up the red carpet, cameras flashing around her, she smiled. Marcus and Lila were inside, celebrating their success, completely unaware that the woman they had destroyed was about to walk back into their lives. But this time she was not coming as a victim. She was coming as a force of nature, and she would not stop until everything they had stolen from her was returned tenfold. The game of revenge was about to begin, and Serafina Cross always played to win. The flames of betrayal that had once consumed her had forged her into something new, something powerful. And now it was their turn to burn. The game of revenge. The grand return. Serafina Cross entered the grand ballroom with the confidence of a queen entering her kingdom. The chandeliers cast golden light across the polished marble floors, and the room buzzed with the chatter of the city's elite. She had paid $50,000 for a table at this charity gala. Money well spent for what she had planned. Her black designer gown hugged her curves perfectly, and diamond earrings sparkled at her ears. She looked nothing like the broken woman who had fled this city 5 years ago. Her short black hair was styled in an elegant bob, and her makeup was flawless. But most importantly, her eyes held a confidence and power that commanded attention. "Miss Cross, welcome." A young woman with a clipboard greeted her. "Your table is number 7, near the front. Mr. Thorne specifically requested you be seated in a prominent location when he heard you were attending." Serafina smiled coolly. How thoughtful of him. She made her way through the crowd, noting the admiring glances and curious whispers that followed her. In the business world, Serafina Cross was a name that inspired both respect and fear. Her consulting firm had taken down several corrupt corporations, and her reputation for ruthless efficiency was well deserved. As she approached her table, she saw them. Marcus and Lila stood near the stage, greeting guests. Marcus looked older, with lines of stress around his eyes that expensive suits couldn't hide. Lila had gained weight and lost some of her youthful glow. They looked successful on the surface, but Serafina's trained eye could see the cracks. Marcus's laugh was too loud, too forced. Lila's smile didn't reach her eyes. They were struggling, just as Serafina's research had indicated. Their company was drowning in debt, held together by creative accounting and desperate measures. "Serafina Cross," a deep voice said behind her. She turned to find a tall man with dark hair and piercing gray eyes watching her with interest. "I've heard a lot about you." "And you are?" she asked, though she already knew. "Dante Moretti, real estate mogul and investor." Another person on her radar. "Dante Moretti. I was hoping we might talk business tonight." Before she could respond, Marcus's voice boomed across the sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our annual charity gala. Pieces on the board." The evening progressed with speeches and performances, but Serafina's attention remained fixed on her targets. She watched Marcus and Lila work the room, noted their interactions, and cataloged every detail. She saw how Marcus drank too much wine, how Lila's eyes darted nervously toward certain guests, how they argued in hushed tones when they thought no one was watching. During dinner, Dante Moretti proved to be surprisingly good company. He was intelligent, witty, and seemed genuinely interested in her work. Unlike most men at these events, he didn't try to dominate the conversation or impress her with his wealth. "I understand you specialize in corporate restructuring," Dante said, swirling his wine glass. "I have several properties that could benefit from your expertise." "I'm selective about my clients," Serafina replied. "I only take on projects that interest me." "And what interests you, Miss Cross?" She met his gaze steadily. "Justice. Accountability. Making sure people get what they deserve." Something flickered in Dante's eyes, a recognition perhaps, or understanding. "Then we might have more in common than I thought." After dinner, Serafina made her move. She approached Marcus and Lila during a break in the program, her heels clicking purposefully across the marble floor. "Mr. and Mrs. Thorne," she said smoothly. "Serafina Cross. I wanted to compliment you on this beautiful event." Marcus turned, his professional smile in place, but froze when he saw her. For a moment, recognition flickered in his eyes, but then confusion replaced it. He was looking at a stranger, not the woman he had destroyed. "Miss Cross, thank you," he recovered quickly. "We're honored to have someone of your reputation here tonight." Lila was staring at her too, her brow furrowed. "Have we met before? You seem familiar." "I don't believe so," Serafina lied smoothly. "Though I've heard wonderful things about your company. In fact, I'm looking to invest in the interior design sector. Perhaps we could schedule a meeting." Marcus's eyes lit up with greed. "Absolutely. We'd be delighted to discuss opportunities with you." Serafina handed him her business card. "Excellent. My assistant will be in touch." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Mrs. Thorne? That's a lovely necklace. Sapphires, aren't they?" Lila's hand went to the necklace at her throat, the same one Sarah had bought with her first major paycheck, the one that had disappeared from her apartment along with everything else she owned. "Yes," Lila said slowly. "It was a gift." "How special," Serafina said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Gifts always mean so much more than purchased items, don't they?" As she walked away, she felt their confused stares on her back. The seed was planted. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Unexpected ally. Later that evening, Serafina stood on the hotel's terrace, looking out over the city lights. The cool night air was refreshing after the stuffiness of the ballroom. "Running away from the party already?" Dante's voice came from behind her. "Taking a break," she corrected. "Sometimes I need air that isn't thick with lies and pretension." He moved to stand beside her, his tall frame relaxed but alert. "You don't like Marcus Thorne." It wasn't a question. Serafina glanced at him, reassessing. "What makes you say that?" "The way you looked at him. Like a chess player studying an opponent." Dante turned to face her fully. "I know that look because I wear it too when I look at him." Why would you have a problem with Marcus Thorne? Dante was quiet for a moment, his jaw tightening. 5 years ago, Thorne and Associates handled the interior design for a property development I was building. They cut corners, used substandard materials, and falsified inspection reports. The building had major structural issues that weren't discovered until after residents moved in. It cost me millions to fix, and my reputation took a serious hit. Why didn't you sue? I tried. But Thorne had connections, lawyers, and evidence that seemed to shift the blame to my contractors. Dante's voice was bitter. He's good at making himself look innocent while others take the fall. Serafina felt a kinship with this man. They both had been wronged by the same people. What if I told you I have a way to make Marcus Thorne pay for his crimes? All of them. Dante studied her face carefully. Then I'd say I'm very interested in helping you. She extended her hand. Partners. He shook it firmly. Partners. But I want to know who you really are, Serafina Cross. Because I don't think that's your real name. She held his gaze, making a calculated decision. My real name is Sarah Winters. 5 years ago, Marcus Thorne and his wife Lila destroyed my life, stole everything I had, and left me with nothing. I've spent 5 years building myself back up for this moment. Recognition and understanding flooded Dante's features. The runaway bride. I remember hearing about that scandal. But the woman in those stories was nothing like you. That woman died, Serafina said coldly. I'm what rose from her ashes. The web tightens. Over the next 3 months, Serafina and Dante worked together with precision and patience. She used her business connections to slowly strangle Thorne and Associates financially. Clients mysteriously canceled contracts after receiving anonymous tips about Marcus's past fraud. Suppliers raised their prices or refused to work with the company. Banks became hesitant to extend credit. Meanwhile, Dante used his real estate connections to block Marcus from lucrative property deals. Every time Marcus thought he had secured a new project, Dante would outbid him or convince the developers to work with other designers. Serafina also began spreading carefully crafted rumors in society circles. Nothing that could be traced back to her, but enough to make people question Marcus and Lila's integrity. She hired private investigators to dig up every piece of dirt on the couple, and she found plenty. Marcus was indeed embezzling from his own company to cover gambling debts. Lila was having an affair with one of their junior designers. They fought constantly, their marriage as fake as the love Marcus had professed to Sarah years ago. But Serafina wanted more than just their financial ruin. She wanted them to feel the same betrayal, the same helplessness she had felt. She arranged for a major hotel chain to approach Thorne and Associates with what seemed like a lucrative contract, the biggest opportunity they'd had in years. Marcus and Lila jumped at it, pouring their remaining resources into preparing the pitch. On the day of the presentation, Serafina made sure she was in the room, sitting at the table as the hotel chain's consulting advisor. The look on Marcus's face when he saw her was priceless, but he was too desperate to back out now. Halfway through his presentation, Serafina interrupted. Mr. Thorne, these designs look remarkably similar to some I've seen before. In fact, she pulled out a folder. They're identical to designs created by a small firm called Winters Design 5 years ago. The room went silent. Marcus turned pale. That's impossible, Lila stammered. These are our original designs. Really? Serafina opened the folder, revealing Sarah's old design portfolios, complete with dates and signatures. Because these documents suggest otherwise, they also suggest a pattern of theft and fraud that goes back years. Feelings complicate. The meeting ended with the hotel chain pulling their offer and threatening legal action. Marcus and Lila fled the room in disgrace, their reputation in tatters. That evening, Serafina and Dante celebrated their victory at a quiet restaurant. The champagne flowed, and for the first time in 5 years, Serafina felt genuinely happy. You were brilliant today, Dante said, raising his glass. The look on Thorne's face when he recognized you was worth everything. We make a good team, Serafina agreed, clinking her glass against his. As the evening progressed, the conversation shifted from business to more personal topics. Dante talked about his childhood in Italy, his struggles to build his business, his failed marriage. Serafina found herself opening up too, sharing stories about her life before the betrayal, the dreams she once had. You know what's strange? Dante said, his gray eyes soft in the candlelight. I came into this wanting revenge. But somewhere along the way I started wanting something else too. What's that? Serafina asked, though her heart already knew the answer. You, he said simply. I've fallen for you, Sarah. The real you. Not the persona you created for revenge. Serafina's breath caught. She hadn't expected this complication. She had built walls around her heart so high that she thought no one could scale them. But Dante had somehow found a way through. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted. The last time I trusted someone with my heart, it destroyed me. I'm not Marcus, Dante said gently, reaching across the table to take her hand. And I'm not asking you to trust me completely right now. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that not everyone will betray you. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with an urgent message from her private investigator. What she read made her blood run cold. The truth unfolds. The message revealed something Serafina had never suspected. The original plan to destroy her life hadn't come from Marcus or Lila. It had come from someone else entirely, someone she had never considered. Her uncle James Winters. According to the investigator's report, James had been embezzling from the family business for years. When Sarah's father had started asking questions, James needed a distraction. He had approached Marcus and Lila with a deal. Destroy Sarah's life, and he would help them build their business with stolen funds and connections. Marcus and Lila had agreed, motivated by jealousy and greed. But James had been the mastermind. He had forged the documents, created the false evidence, and made sure that Sarah would take the fall for his crimes. With Sarah disgraced and her father distracted by family drama, James had continued his embezzlement for years. What's wrong? Dante asked, seeing her expression. Serafina showed him the message, her hands trembling with rage. All these years she had focused her anger on Marcus and Lila, when the real architect of her destruction was her own blood. I need to see my father, she said, standing abruptly. Right now. They drove to her childhood home, where her father still lived. He opened the door in his bathrobe, surprised to see his daughter after years of limited contact. Sarah, he said, using her real name. What are you doing here? Did you know? She demanded, pushing past him into the house. Did you know what Uncle James did? Her father's face crumpled. I found out 2 years ago. I've been trying to gather enough evidence to prove it, but James covered his tracks well. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know where you were. You disappeared. Serafina felt tears burning behind her eyes, the first real tears she had shed in years. He destroyed my life, Dad. He used Marcus and Lila as pawns, and he destroyed everything I had built. I know, her father said, his voice breaking. And I'm so sorry. I should have seen it sooner. I should have protected you. Dante stepped forward, his hand on Serafina's shoulder. Where is James Winters now? He's at a business conference in the city, her father said. At the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. The same place where the gala was held. Serafina and Dante exchanged glances. The same hotel. Of course it was. Then that's where we're going, Serafina said, wiping her eyes and straightening her shoulders. It's time to finish this. All of it. As they drove back to the city, Serafina realized that her quest for revenge had become more complicated than she had ever imagined. It wasn't just about Marcus and Lila anymore. It was about justice, about truth, and about reclaiming not just her business and reputation, but her ability to trust and love again. She looked at Dante, who was driving with one hand while holding hers with the other, and felt something shift inside her. Maybe revenge wasn't enough. Maybe what she really needed was redemption, both for herself and for the people who had wronged her. But first, she had to face her uncle and make sure that all the people responsible for her suffering finally paid the price. The game wasn't over yet, but Serafina could see the endgame approaching. And this time she would make sure it ended on her terms. Part 3: Redemption Through Fire. The final confrontation. The Grand Metropolitan Hotel's conference center was buzzing with activity when Serafina and Dante arrived. Business professionals in expensive suits filled the halls, networking and making deals. But Serafina had only one target in mind. James Winters was easy to find. He stood in the center of a group of admirers, holding court like a king among his subjects. He was a handsome man in his 50s, with silver hair and a charismatic smile. No one looking at him would suspect the monster he truly was. Serafina had called ahead, using her connections to arrange a private meeting room. She had also made sure that certain other people would be present. Marcus and Lila had been summoned under the pretense of a new business opportunity, desperate enough to jump at any chance. Her father had agreed to come, bringing the evidence he had gathered. And Serafina had one more surprise prepared. "Uncle James," she said, approaching him with a smile that could cut glass. "How wonderful to see you." James turned, his expression puzzled at first, then shocked as recognition dawned. "Sarah? Is that really you?" "In the flesh," she said. "Though I go by Serafina now. Sarah Winters died 5 years ago. You made sure of that." His face paled, and the people around them began to sense tension. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you? Then perhaps we should discuss it in private. I have a conference room reserved. Unless you'd prefer to have this conversation here, in front of all these people." James looked around at the curious faces watching them, then nodded stiffly. "Fine. Let's talk." The conference room was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. When James entered, he found himself facing not just Serafina and Dante, but also Marcus, Lila, and Sarah's father, John Winters. "What is this?" Marcus demanded, looking confused and angry. "This," Serafina said, closing the door behind them, "is Judgment Day." She walked to the head of the table, standing in a position of power. 5 years ago, my life was destroyed. I lost my business, my reputation, my home, and nearly my life. I blamed Marcus and Lila for everything. I spent 5 years planning revenge against them. Marcus and Lila exchanged nervous glances, but James remained still, his face a careful mask. "But recently I learned the truth," Serafina continued. "Marcus and Lila were just pawns in a much larger game. The real architect of my destruction was someone I trusted completely. Someone who was supposed to protect me." She turned to James, her eyes blazing. "My own uncle. Secrets and lies." John Winters stepped forward, pulling a thick folder from his briefcase. "James, I gave you every opportunity to come clean. I've been investigating you for 2 years, hoping I was wrong. But the evidence is overwhelming." He spread documents across the conference table. Bank statements showing transfers of embezzled funds. Emails between James and Marcus plotting Sarah's downfall. Forged documents with James's digital fingerprints all over them. "You were stealing from the family business," John said, his voice heavy with betrayal. "When I started asking questions, you needed a distraction. So you approached Marcus Thorne, who was dating my daughter, and you made him an offer." "How?" James whispered, staring at the screen in horror. "Your own security cameras," Serafina said. "You were so confident that you never deleted the footage. My investigators found it on your old backup drives. Thank you for keeping such thorough records." The room fell silent as the video ended. The evidence was undeniable and devastating. Choice of mercy. Marcus slumped in his chair, his face in his hands. "What are you going to do? Turn us in to the police?" Serafina looked at the 3 people who had destroyed her life. 5 years ago, she would have begged them for mercy and received none. Now she held all the power and they were the ones begging. "I could," she said slowly. "I have enough evidence to send James to prison for decades. Marcus and Lila would face charges for fraud and conspiracy. Your businesses would be destroyed, your reputations ruined, your lives shattered. Everything you did to me, I could do to you tenfold." Hope flickered in their eyes, but also fear. "But I've learned something over the past 5 years," Serafina continued, her voice softer now. "Revenge doesn't heal wounds. It just creates new ones. If I destroy you the way you destroyed me, I become no better than you. I become the monster that you created." She looked at Dante, who nodded encouragingly, understanding what she was about to do. "However," Serafina said, her voice hardening again, "mercy doesn't mean you escape consequences. Here's what's going to happen. James, you will return every penny you stole from the family business with interest. You will resign from all your positions and retire. If you don't, this video goes to the police and the media. James nodded weakly, the fight gone out of him. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He said he would give us seed money for our business and connect us with high-profile clients. All we had to do was make sure Sarah took the fall for some financial irregularities. We didn't know he was going to destroy her completely. Don't lie, Lila snapped at her husband. We knew exactly what we were doing. We were jealous of her success, and we wanted what she had. Serafina felt a strange sense of satisfaction at seeing them turn on each other, but also a deeper sadness. These people had all betrayed her for such petty reasons. Money, jealousy, self-preservation. James convinced us that Sarah would be fine, Marcus continued, desperate to shift blame. He said she would just face some minor legal troubles and have to close her business. He said it was necessary to protect the family fortune. We didn't know he was using forged documents and false testimony. You knew enough, Dante said coldly. You knew you were destroying an innocent woman's life, and you did it anyway for money. James finally spoke, his voice calm and cold. You can't prove any of this. Those documents could be fabricated. My lawyers will tear this apart in court. Maybe, Serafina agreed. But I have something better than just documents. She pressed a button on a remote control, and a screen descended from the ceiling. A video began to play, showing James in his office 5 years ago, talking on the phone. The audio was crystal clear. Yes, the wedding is tomorrow, James's voice said. Make sure the video plays exactly when she walks down the aisle. I want maximum humiliation. Once her reputation is destroyed, no one will believe anything she says about the financial irregularities. The video continued, showing James meeting with Marcus and Lila, planning every detail of Sarah's destruction. It showed him forging documents, bribing officials, and laughing about how easy it was to manipulate everyone. Sarah stepped back from the bridge railing and made a decision. She would not let them win. She would not let them destroy her completely. If they wanted to burn her life to the ground, she would rise from the ashes stronger than before. She withdrew what little money she had left and bought a bus ticket to another city. She changed her appearance, cutting her long brown hair short and dyeing it black. She got a job as a waitress in a small cafe and spent every free moment planning. She studied business strategy, legal loopholes, and psychology. She worked multiple jobs, saving every penny. She learned about investments, corporate takeovers, and the art of manipulation. She transformed herself from the naive, trusting woman she had been into someone harder, smarter, and more dangerous. At night, she would lie in her tiny apartment and visualize her return. She imagined walking back into her old world, not as the broken victim they had left behind, but as someone they would fear. Someone who would make them pay for every tear she had cried, every humiliation she had endured. The anger sustained her through the hardest times. When she wanted to give up, she thought of Marcus's smug face and Lila's cruel smile. She thought of how they had celebrated her destruction while she suffered. And she kept going, rising from ashes. 5 years passed. Sarah, now calling herself Serafina Cross, had built a new empire. Using a combination of smart investments, strategic partnerships, and sheer determination, she had created a consulting firm that specialized in corporate restructuring. Her reputation for turning failing businesses into profitable ventures was legendary, though few knew her real identity. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sarah's father gripped her arm tighter, steadying her as her legs threatened to give out. She watched, frozen in horror, as the video continued to show more intimate moments between her fiancé and her best friend. Sarah, I can explain, Marcus started, stepping forward, but his voice was drowned out by the growing murmur of the shocked guests. Lila appeared from the side door, her face not showing the shame Sarah expected, but something else. Satisfaction. Cold, calculated satisfaction. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way, Lila said, her voice carrying false sympathy. But honestly, Sarah, did you really think someone like Marcus would stay with someone like you forever? You're sweet, but you're ordinary. The conspiracy revealed. The next hours passed in a nightmare blur. Sarah fled the chapel, still in her wedding gown, mascara streaming down her face. She drove to her apartment, but when she arrived, she found the locks had been changed. A notice was taped to the door stating she was being evicted for non-payment of rent. But she had paid. She always paid on time. Frantic calls to her bank revealed that her accounts had been emptied. Her business account, her savings, her emergency fund. All gone. When she contacted the police, they informed her that she had apparently signed documents transferring everything to Marcus 3 weeks ago. Documents she had never seen. Her phone rang constantly. Clients canceling contracts. Business partners ending agreements. Within 24 hours, her entire professional reputation was in ruins. Rumors spread that she had embezzled money from clients, that her designs were stolen from others, that her business success was built on lies. Every accusation was false, but the evidence against her seemed overwhelming. Documents appeared with her forged signature. False testimonies from people she had never met. Her world was crumbling, and she realized with growing horror that this was not a crime of passion. This was planned, calculated, deliberate, losing everything. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah learned the full extent of the betrayal. Marcus and Lila had been working together for over a year, carefully orchestrating her downfall. Marcus had proposed marriage not out of love, but to gain access to her business contacts and financial information. Lila, consumed by jealousy of Sarah's success, had helped him every step of the way. They had stolen her client list and sold it to competitors. They had sabotaged her projects, ensuring delays and mistakes that damaged her reputation. They had slowly drained her finances through fake invoices and fraudulent expenses. And they had made sure that when the truth came out on her wedding day, she would be left with nothing. The legal system offered no help. The false documents were too convincing, and Marcus had expensive lawyers who tied up every attempt she made to fight back. Her own lawyer, someone she had trusted, admitted he had been paid off to provide inadequate representation. Sarah found herself living in a cheap motel, working minimum wage jobs to survive. Friends abandoned her, believing the lies. Her family, though sympathetic, couldn't afford to help her financially. She was alone, broken, and defeated. One night, standing on a bridge overlooking the dark river, she considered ending it all. The pain was too much, the betrayal too deep. But as she stood there, something shifted inside her. Anger began